Hey guys, so I wanted to make this video for a few reasons. I wanted to address a few misconceptions, like the idea that we lent Roger money, for example, or gave him a credit line, which we didn't do, and I'll get into those details. Roger's spoken publicly about the fact that he was a trader on CoinFLEX and his trading on CoinFLEX, but in reality he wasn't just a trader, he wasn't just a user. He helped us build, promote, and improve the CoinFLEX product from day one. He had more equity in CoinFLEX than any other founder, and he had every incentive for the platform to succeed. This is someone that I've been friends with for 11 years and knew as a business partner for several years. Now, because restructuring has been approved in the Seychelles court and we've won more than 20 different court cases against him, I thought it'd be useful to share some of the quotes from the judge with respect to Roger's character, and I'll also talk about some reflections and some learnings from this whole experience. So some of you guys are probably wondering, why make this video now? CoinFLEX's restructuring is approved, you're building a new business, why bother? Leave the past in the past. Well, in life, we only have one name. I'm the son of two pastors and the grandson of an astrophysicist, and I'm proud of my name. I'm proud of where I come from. My whole career, I've built things in the public domain with every decision I made and every way we changed a product or changed a business subject to public scrutiny. And today is no different, and if the public wants to decide whether to do business with me, I think it's best that they have all the facts that I'm able to share. So as a result of Roger's attempts to block our restructuring and the frivolous court claims he's made and been hurling at us, he has discussed a lot of information which would otherwise be subject to confidentiality restrictions that are in force right now. And through court claims in Seychelles and the public judgment that has been given, we've been given the ability to share all these things transparently and publicly. So, without further ado, many people had the misconception that we lent to Roger money, or we gave him a credit line using customer funds. This is not what happened, and in crypto, most exchanges and most users of most exchanges are on what's called auto liquidation. So this means that if their account equity goes low enough, their position will get liquidated. It'll be automatically sold into the market, even if they have more funds elsewhere and they're willing to top up. So at 4 a.m. on a Sunday, if you're fast asleep, the market's moving against your position, you may have your position force closed against you. This is auto liquidation. Now, traditional futures exchanges like the CME and ICE don't have auto liquidation. In fact, the parties that margin those end users usually give their customers 24 hours, 12 hours, 3 days, some period of time to top up funds before clearing out a user's position. Many crypto exchanges do this as well, but only for their large VIP institutional clients. They call it manual margin or non-liquidation accounts. And these are effectively big boy agreements, sometimes secured by external collateral, liens against an entity, personal guarantees, various things. As set out in page 3 of the Seychelles court judgment, we had a written manual margin agreement with Roger Ver personally, and he failed to honor his obligations pursuant to that agreement. So that's just quoting from the court transcript. This is a person I've known for 11 years. Like many Bitcoiners early in the day, we met online, part of common forums that people would discuss Bitcoin on and the reasons for creating it, the technical aspects of it. And we would frequently meet up in London, Amsterdam, and other places to talk about our shared passion for Bitcoin, freedom, and a vision of the world that was filled with infinitely more economic possibilities and infinitely less economic friction. This was something that was extremely attractive to both of us. And actually, for the first 6 years of knowing each other and being friends with each other, we didn't do much business together. He wasn't an investor in my first exchange, which was CoinFLEX, the UK's first Bitcoin exchange. And he was mostly focused on Japan and the whole world. We were mostly focused on the UK. And so we were very close friends, speak frequently, but we were not in business together. But I'd seen him build several successful businesses, both memory dealers and also blockchain.com. And so I looked up to him and his entrepreneurial successes, and I would get advice from him time to time when I was building CoinFLEX, the first UK Bitcoin exchange. And when I set out from the UK to Hong Kong and moved to Hong Kong to build CoinFLEX, Roger was one of the first people I asked to be an investor in CoinFLEX. And on that first call, he agreed right away and said he'd be happy to help us on anything we were building and help us with the business. At this point, Bitcoin had split into BTC and BCH, Bitcoin Cash. And I'd been involved with Bitcoin Cash since its inception. Since that initial fork, I'd been in a lot of the conversations about Bitcoin Cash. And although Roger was on the fence for several months, he quickly became one of the biggest proponents of Bitcoin Cash. So this was something we had in common in addition to our many, many years of friendship. And he said when he invested, he'd be super happy to help us, giving feedback on any parts of the product as a user, giving feedback on how to develop the business as an entrepreneur. And he pointed out to us that he was one of the first lenders and first derivatives users on Bitcoinica, which was the first derivatives platform in crypto back in 2012. He also talked about his activity on a wide array of other platforms ever since. So later on, we developed an earn product similar to what many exchanges and many other crypto platforms had in the form of yield products and lending products. And Roger came to us one day with a very, very interesting suggestion, which is that we actually tokenize this yield product into an interest-bearing stablecoin, which would be the first ever interest-bearing stablecoin. And I found this idea extremely fascinating because you would then be able to have the spendability and transferability of a stablecoin, but with the yield function of an earn product or a lending product. And so you don't lock up, to the extent that the stablecoin is accepted in other places and in DeFi, you don't lock up your funds, but you also get the yield and interest that comes from locking up your funds. And it was kind of a beautiful mixture of both worlds. And I found it extremely interesting, especially as an on-chain product. On blockchains, it could be moved around, put into DeFi, all sorts of things. And so with Roger, we created this product working in close collaboration. We called it FlexUSD. He promoted it actively on Twitter, YouTube, and also via his company, Bitcoin.com. We would regularly, very, very frequently have calls to discuss how to get FlexUSD into more places and also how to get other CoinFLEX products adopted. And from talking to him and speaking to him about how he traded, how he lent, how he, different activities he had in crypto, we talked about his derivatives activities, especially his OTC options trading via the different OTC desks in crypto. And he would frequently ask me, when's CoinFLEX or is CoinFLEX going to launch options markets? And, he made it clear that if we did launch options markets, this would be something he would be very eager to use and very interested in as a user. And so we would often talk about how Uniswap v3, putting liquidity into Uniswap v3 is very, very similar to selling options. It's kind of like selling a perpetual option. There's no duration, but otherwise it's economically similar to selling options. And he said that if we were to create a product similar to that, but in our futures market, he would love to provide liquidity into our perpetual futures. And if the market moved against him, he could just He could sell options. If the market moved against him, he could just take it to delivery if his position got too big or if he didn't want to be in the trade anymore. And so we worked together to create AMM+, which was the first AMM that provided liquidity into a futures markets. And that was on CoinFLEX. In close collaboration with him, we got lots of feedback and launched that product. And after launch, he was both a very early active user, but he was also actively giving feedback. So he promoted this product again on YouTube to various parts of his audience, to various members of his community, the Bitcoin Cash community especially. And he'd regularly bring me onto calls with large trader friends and investor friends, and he would pitch them AMM+. He would say, I'm a user of it, you should try this out. And I would answer any questions that these people, these friends of his, people in his network had as well. And at this point, Roger had invested in CoinFLEX to a point where he owned more equity than I did. And he would communicate with our team every single day. So it felt to me like he was a deeply involved business partner that we could rely on and would be extremely actively engaged in our derivatives markets, how it functioned, how to build it, how to grow it, scaling our customer base, etc. Publicly, his persona was focused on Bitcoin Cash. But from all this, I got to see a private side to him, which was pure capitalist, how to grow, how to scale, coin agnostic, let's grow this business as much as we can. And I also, kind of got introduced to various parts of his network. And he promoted both FlexUSD and AMM+ to these people in his network. And so this was new. It was interesting. Someone I'd been friends with for a decade, now we were getting to work together as business partners as well. And when the eventual default happened, obviously I've posted 2 letters to Roger. I'd love to see a resolution for our creditors, a swift repayment that doesn't depend on legal processes. But that's ultimately not what this video is about. This video is just to clear up misconceptions of the past and, move on and rebuild and whatnot. So I want to also get into some of the court transcripts. And as mentioned, Roger Ver has interfered with CoinFLEX's restructuring. He's launched more than 20 court claims against CoinFLEX. We have beaten him in every single legal challenge so far, and also the restructuring was approved, which he tried to disrupt. And so here is an excerpt from David Esperon, a Supreme Court judge in the Seychelles. I find that the witnesses for the applicant, namely Mr. Lam and Mr. Arumugam, were credible witnesses before the court. On the other hand, I find that Mr. Roger Ver is a witness that has an ulterior motive to serve, since he is the claimant in an arbitration proceeding against the applicant in Hong Kong. The judge separately stated that he found Roger came to the court without clean hands. And we're very confident that other neutral third parties anywhere else in the world will come to similar conclusions. So what have I learned from this whole experience? Well, in business, commitments and contracts and dealings are enforceable via legal contracts. Here, our alignment with Roger went way beyond that. It was deep, it was long-term, our legal protections were extremely strong. He built CoinFLEX with us. His own BCH community had been onboarded by him. In fact, we were even the bridge for the Smart BCH sort of layer 2 ecosystem on top of BCH. Many of his personal friends had major stakes in the company, major amounts of deposits on the platform, and were greatly harmed by his actions. He promoted CoinFLEX on YouTube, on Twitter, and privately throughout his network. Despite all this, and despite the relative ease with which he could have resolved this situation, he chose to betray the trust of so many people. And so the brutal lesson for me here is never, ever to depend on legal contracts and third parties when user funds are concerned. Even though this is the way that all businesses around the world are protected, and this is how most business is done. And even though core founders may have aligned incentives today and misaligned incentives tomorrow, users should never have to deal with the fallout of any of these things. And so we're very confident that the legal processes will come to a fair outcome. These delays still cause huge amounts of suffering for end users. Crypto ultimately provides the solutions to these risks via full transparency. And so after the excruciating pain of last year, I will never deviate from crypto's principles again. Going forward, I'll only build systems that don't depend on third-party contracts and third-party systems. No manual margin agreements will ever be made. Everything we build will be fully transparent in terms of the margin, customer funds, liquidation data, etc. And this is going to be cryptographically provable in real time to all users, so that everyone can verify what's actually happening for themselves. Regarding the past, I'm confident in a fair outcome through the legal system. And in terms of the future, I fell in love with the principles of decentralization, openness, and trustlessness, and I'll be building in line with those principles.